All right, thank you everyone for tuning in, watching this presentation. My name is Cameron Glenn. I'm the Director of PR and Outreach at Thrive. Just a little bit about Thrive. We are the Center for Financial Independence here at Northeastern. So we're here to teach you about financial literacy and becoming a financially independent individual, both during college and once you graduate Northeastern. So today I have the opportunity to talk to you about how you're going to get paid on co-op. Congratulations, hopefully, on landing a co-op. And from there on, we're going to tell you what to do with your money, which is really important. So everything that we're going to be talking about in this presentation is going to be super helpful. I'm going to try to go quick so you can get all this information in a short amount of time, but I do want to make sure that everyone, even though this is asynchronous, understands what I'm talking about so you can manage your money and learn what you're doing. Just a reminder before we get right into it that Thrive, the Center for Financial Independence, we're not tax or legal professionals. Everything I say in this presentation is just in like a general personal finance situation sense. So we aren't sponsored or endorsed by any of the services or products we mention. Just have to put that out there as a disclaimer. All right, and through this presentation, I'm first going to talk a little bit about how to get paid, how to onboard remotely, especially kind of understand your salary, budget for your goals. We're going to talk about student loans for a little bit, retirement, and then if it applies to you, co-oping outside of Boston. So first, we're going to talk about salary. Everyone pretty much knows what that means. It's also a similar word to wages or your hourly wage, and that's how much you're going to be making for the job you're doing. So when you start thinking about salary, on the left here, we see gross income. So gross income means the total you make, the company puts out before any taxes. So I think if anyone's heard the word gross before, it's probably in the sense of highest grossing movie of 2019 or something. And this means not necessarily what the profit was of the movie, of just how much it sold, like in general. So gross is before you take out any taxes. On the other end, I'm not sure if my little square is in the way, um, we have net income. So that is after the taxes are taken out. It's kind of like what you net after, some things fall through. So that's after taxes are taken out. So your definite taxes will be, of course, your federal and state taxes, which we'll go over, as well as Social Security and Medicaid. And you can have other things taken out of your income, which will contribute to the net income, which could be insurance or retirement savings plans. This may not be applicable to you while you're on co-op at 19, 20 years old, but these are also some things that can be taken out. So as a reminder, gross is before anything is taken out, net is after. All right, and like I was talking about for your net income, these are the different taxes that will be taken out. Federal income tax, which we'll go over on the next slide, is a percentage based on how much income you bring in. So people who bring in more income typically have a higher federal income tax. Then there's state income tax. For Massachusetts, it's about 5%, and it differs per state. And then FICA includes your Social Security and Medicare benefits. I know you're not going to be really worrying about those until your 60s, but they are taken out for any person working in the US, and that's just over 7% of your income. So these are the three different basic things that are taken out of your gross income. And here we have a quick slide. It may look confusing at first, but I will explain it on what a federal income tax bracket looks like. So a federal income tax bracket is a marginal tax. So everything you make under a certain amount is going to be taxed here at 10%. And then just that amount over here, it's around $9,800, is going to be taxed at that next level. So some people say, oh, maybe it might not be a good idea to get a raise because then you're in a new tax bracket. It doesn't make a difference because just the extra money on top of that in the new bracket is going to be taxed at that higher rate. So in terms of co-op, if you're making more than $40,000 and $40,125, impressive to you, can't believe it. So most people will fall in between the 9,800 and that $40,000 mark. So your first $9,800, 9,875 is taxed at 10%, and then anything above that is taxed at 12%. Not a huge difference, but this is just how federal income tax is set up. So your first, like I said, $9,800 is taxed at 10%, and then the remaining over that at 12%. Here is an example of an earnings statement. It's not somebody's actual one, it's just a fake one to explain it. But here we kind of see everything we just talked about. So on the left, you see James Roberts' gross wages. So he made $1,000 during this pay period, and that's his gross wages. So that's before anything is taken out. On the right, you can see here it says deductions. So these are the different things that are taken out of his gross pay. So there's FICA Medicare tax, FICA Social Security, Fed tax, which is federal income tax, California state tax, and these are the different things that are taken out of his gross income. So this is for this pay period. It amounts to around $290, and then they also always will give you the year-to-date total, so you have a better gauge for how much is taken out throughout the year since January 1. And also on the left here, you can see throughout the whole year, he's grossed about 5,000 and around 1,400 has been taken out in taxes. So his net pay, what he ends up keeping, which goes to his bank account or whatever, is around 3,500. Hopefully this makes sense. Take a minute to pause here if you want to kind of understand this a little more, but this is what a typical earnings statement, also called a pay stub, would look like. And then just to go over this, the different types of pay periods. Of course, weekly means you're paid once a week. Usually employers will send out their payments for your wages on Fridays. And biweekly means every 2 weeks. So this is like every other Friday you would get paid. This is typically the most common. There are some other types of pay periods that some co-ops utilize. A salary or lump sum payment would be either at the very end, maybe the very beginning of your co-op, and similar to a stipend, it's usually one payment or a larger one that isn't split up based on how many hours you worked. And it's definitely important to keep your pay period in mind when creating a budget, because if you're paid every 2 weeks, you're going to have to budget a little differently than being paid every week. And also something I really want to stress is that you're budgeting based off your net income. You're not going to want to budget off your gross. That will definitely throw you off because you do have to pay taxes. And so I would just recommend that everyone budget off their net income once you see what that may be. It's usually around, give or take, 75% of what your gross is. All right, and if anyone's heard of a W-4, it's the form you're required to fill out when you start a new job. So it will determine how much of taxes are taken out of each paycheck. I know it can be a little intimidating. You don't want to be like giving your money away like right away. When you start working, it's definitely a shock when you get your first pay stub and you're like, I thought I was getting paid $15 an hour and now it's more like $11 an hour. Taxes are a thing, but this is what your W-4 kind of fills out. You fill out your personal allowances worksheet, which finds out for you how much you need to claim. So you can claim anything from 0 to 10 on that scale of personal allowances. So the more you claim, the less tax dollars are taken out of your paycheck. This may seem like all fine and dandy. You could be tax exempt. However, this means that you're going to have to pay the federal or state government a lot more. Taxes come tax season, usually April 15th. So it's definitely up to you if you want your taxes to be taken out more so during your working months, year, or if you want to be tax exempt and pay it all the following year. The goal in personal finance is to break zero, break even. That's unrealistic and doesn't really happen. But in a perfect world, you would have all your taxes withheld perfectly and not have to pay any in the spring. So you're just trying to get there. And that's what your personal allowances worksheet will help you figure out what to do when you're filling out your W-4, probably your first week on co-op. Another question you're going to ask yourself is, are you a dependent? So to be a dependent, you have to be under 24 years old, which is probably everyone. You do have to be a full-time student. And I do want to stress to everyone that even while you're on co-op, you are considered a full-time student of Northeastern, which is really great. That has a lot of benefits, actually. You can still be a dependent even though you're working full-time and not taking classes. Beats me. You do have to be unmarried with no children of your own, and your parents do need to provide at least half your financial support. which is kind of like why you're dependent on them. And a W-4 in 2020, this is kind of what it looks like. So as you can see here, there's going to be different questions on your personal information, your jobs, any dependents you may have, or if you want to claim dependent to someone else. And we do have to tell you that you can also claim as tax exempt by writing exempt under the 4C question on your W-4. Like I said before, if you file tax exempt, you are going to have to pay a pretty penny come April 15th or in the spring to the federal and state government, etc. All right, and then your I-9, I know there's a bunch of letters, numbers. W-4, like I said, says how much you're going to keep out in taxes of your pay period and money you make. Your I-9 is just saying that you're eligible to work in the US. Hopefully you are eligible to work because you got a co-op, congratulations. So usually the I-9 always has to be filled out in person because what it does is confirm that you are who you say you are with your identification. Now it can be done over Zoom or a video call, usually with someone through HR. I had to do it this past summer and this nice woman just said, hold up your identification and send me a scanned picture so I can like prove that it's you. It's not too complicated. I do want to remind everyone that to this documentation that I just mentioned, you either need a US passport that isn't expired, or you need both of these things. You need a valid driver's license and your social security card. If you are not a US citizen, there are other ways to kind of like verify that you're allowed to work in the US in terms of working visas, etc. We can answer more questions at that later, but these are the documents that you may want to get a hold of before your first week being onboarded on co-op. Something that you'll also probably hear about your first week on co-op is setting up direct deposit. So direct deposit, kind of self-explanatory with the name, deposits your wages and salary directly to your bank account where you hold your checking and or savings. This is also known as paperless payment. It's easier usually for the company and it's easier for you because they don't have to print checks, sign them, mail them to you. You drive to the bank, deposit, that sort of thing. It's just an immediate transfer of money. And what you'll need to set up direct deposit is the routing number of your bank. So you can just Google that. What is the routing number for X bank in this state? And that's just public information pretty much. And then you will need your bank account number. Hopefully everyone knows their bank account number. If not, you can just go on your bank account and look at that number. The other thing about direct deposit is you'll have the option on your company's website on how you want it to divide, if possible, your direct deposit. So you can say on their site, if you want 50% to go to the X account, maybe it's your savings account. If you want 50% to go to your checking, and you can definitely split up those saving amounts however you see fit. And that's a really easy way to kind of manage your money before it even comes in. And then we're going to talk a little bit about making the most of your paycheck. It's really exciting that you're working for 4 to 6 months, not taking classes, and you want to enjoy that money and kind of make the most of it. This may be your first full-time job. For the most of us, it usually is. So let's talk about making the most of that pretty paycheck. So the first thing you want to do is consider what your expenses are. This is so different for everyone. So definitely take a minute, even a few minutes really, to think about what your expenses are so you can get that down first. Your basic needs for survival are of course food, so think about your grocery budget. It's obviously different for everyone. You may be living at home still and doing NU Flex and your parents are paying for your groceries. You may be on a meal plan, so that's already more or less prepaid and you're not worrying about that on a week-to-week basis. Transportation is usually something that we also stress. Nowadays, your co-op may be remote, so that walk from your bed to your desk is not really going to be a big part of your expenses, but you may be co-oping in person, have to think about getting a T or a commuter card, that sort of thing, or maybe even a car. And of course, your living expenses. So if you're living off campus, that's paying your rent every month. If you're living on campus, your situation is definitely different per person. If you're paying your parents, if your parents or guardian are paying the university, so different for every single person. But we're just stressing that you think about these three basic survival needs first and foremost. And then second, you definitely want to be thinking of your savings. Think about your savings goals. Do you want to graduate with X amount of debt or X amount in savings? Do you want to finish your co-op with, say, $1,000 in savings, maybe even $5,000? Those are just random numbers, totally proprietary to you. And also in terms of savings, we really stress that you have an emergency fund. So an emergency fund in a perfect world is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So add up how much you would have to pay in rent for the next 3 to 6 months, food, all your basic necessities. And that is kind of the goal, even like before you graduate, to set up, because you'll always, no matter what happens in the world, have enough money to rely on for living for 3 to 6 months on your own. And then the remaining, of course, is for this is a funny page, is your discretionary spending. So it's up to your discretion what you do with the remaining after you pay off your typical expenses and then your saving goals. You can enjoy the rest of the money. You're working probably 40 hours a week, maybe even more. So you definitely deserve to enjoy it. And that's what your discretionary spending is. The golden rule for kind of budgeting, saving, that kind of thing is called the 50-20-30 rule. So it's what we promote here at Thrive. 50% of your income, monthly income, should go to your fixed expenses. So that be your rent, your food, etc. 20% should always go to savings so that you maintain a healthy growth of savings throughout your lifetime, starting from a young age. And then we also recommend that 30% go to discretionary, whether that be going out to dinner with friends, shopping, or doing something. I can't really travel that much now, but doing something that you enjoy. Some budgeting resources that we recommend here at Thrive, of course, coming to our events is number one, but some other ones you can look at are these websites listed here. Coursera is really great. They have courses on budgeting and personal finance. Intuit has kind of a product called Mint. A lot of people have probably heard of it, but it's an app on the App Store where you link your checking account to this app, which kind of seems like an invasion of privacy, but you do you. I mean, we're pretty much living open lives these days. And the Mint app kind of breaks down with like their technology what you've been spending per certain category. If you've been having more income one month, if you've been saving more, spending more another month. I think you can even go on a week-to-week basis. It'll show you this really cool round pie chart that says, you know, X percent of your income has been spent on going out this month compared to last month. And it also like scales it to how much money you brought in. So it's a really cool way to visualize the data that your finances have been collecting in an easy way. And so just to sum up, ask yourself, what does this money need to do before I'm paid again? So whether this is a weekly occurrence, bi-weekly, if you're kind of budgeting for your whole co-op. So payday happens on a Friday. The first thing we recommend you do is pay your rent. You need to keep that roof over your head no matter what. That's the end goal. Not end goal, but that's the first goal rather. And with that roof over your head, you want to make sure that you can keep the lights on, that you can keep the water running. So that would be your utility bill. That can also include Wi-Fi, cable, etc. After that, you can treat yourself to eating. So we consider food to be the next goal. And then look at your saving goals as well as student loans. And then after that, you can start thinking about fun. And we are going to start talking just a little bit about student loans. So if this is something that if you're taking on debt during college, we definitely recommend taking this amazing opportunity of co-op to start paying back the loans and making it a priority in your budget. We'll talk a little bit about the different loans for a few minutes, just so everyone can kind of refresh their memory. And there's a lot of information, but definitely feel free to pause it. We'll go into that in just a few seconds. And we recommend that you pay off your unsubsidized loans first, which have the highest or higher interest rates. And we also really, really recommend that you look at the student loans you're taking on cancel the ones during co-op that you don't need or reduce the ones you do need. You obviously aren't going to be paying tuition on co-op. Hopefully you already know that. If I just told you that for the first time, congratulations. That's the best thing about Northeastern. But you will still be paying for your housing. You need to live somewhere. And this may fall under your student loans as well. So reduce it to just that if possible. So just quickly, the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Subsidized means the interest that accrues during your college years is subsidized, i.e. paid for by the government, the federal government, specifically the U.S. Department of Education. It still counts when you are in co-op, which is really, really cool. So like I said, yeah, interest is paid during college. Unsubsidized, the first day you step on campus, you start accruing that interest. It's not necessarily need-based, so it's kind of available to everyone if they qualify for it. And like I said, this interest does start accruing. So what we recommend is you start paying off that interest at least while you're still in school. You start paying off that principal even so that you can really get ahead on your unsubsidized loans because those are starting to accrue interest. So just kind of thinking about interest, I know it's kind of a hot topic word, it's very stressful, but as stressful as it is, this is, like I said, a great opportunity in co-op to start really addressing your loans and kind of getting ahead of it so that you don't fall into that category later in life of, oh, so-and-so is in 7 figures of debt for like the rest of their life. That's not going to be you because you're listening to this presentation and you're going to be financially independent. So this little graph on the left shows how much $1,000 loan principal will accumulate an interest at around 10% over 20 years. So of course, when it's still 0 years, if you paid it off the second you took on the debt, you'd just be paying off that 1,000. But the interest does start compounding pretty quickly. So after 20 years, that $1,000 can turn into over $7,000 because that interest does compound. And probably you're taking on more than just $1,000 in student debt. So really start to think about what you can do during co-op to pay off that interest or even the principal. If you can get that principal down just a little bit, it's going to help accrue less interest throughout the next years of your life. So we really recommend just like start thinking about this. Look into your loans and figure out what you can do to try to get ahead of this. Moving on, I know no one is thinking really too much about their 60s, 70s, 80s plus while they're 19, 20 years old on their first co-op, but it's important to start thinking about retirement. This is quite the wordy slide just because there's so much information on retirement accounts. You can definitely pause here to read over it more. I'll just be pretty streamlined and say the difference between the different retirement accounts. I know it's very confusing at first, but your traditional 401k is set up by your employer and the IRAs are set up by yourself. So back to 401k, it's you're putting in money pre-tax. So part of that gross income is going into your 401k. So you're not getting taxed. It's coming straight from your employer. On the other hand, it does have to get taxed eventually. So when you take that out, kind of once you're 59 and a half, you will get taxed on that end. Similarly, traditional IRA is also pre-tax contributions. So you're putting in your gross income into your traditional IRA. When you take that out, it will be taxed. The Roth IRA, which is also individually set up, is the only one that is post-tax. So you take your net income, put it into a Roth IRA, and you won't be taxed when you take that out once you're a lot older. And the purpose of retirement accounts is to help grow your money and invest your money so that it does accumulate some gains for you, maybe some dividends over your years, and can really help you grow wealth versus just putting your money into a savings account with a lower kind of interest rate. And like I said, we recommend at Thrive that this is the retirement account priority you follow. 401k or 403b sometimes for teachers or people in education. are the first retirement accounts you should be worried about, then Roth IRA, then traditional IRA. If you're lucky enough in this COVID-19 pandemic to be co-oping outside the US, congratulations. Maybe you're from another country and co-oping not in the United States. That's also totally valid and common. Before you leave the US, these are some typical traveling tips that we give from Thrive. Probably won't be you, but if you are co-oping for a company, even remotely, that's based outside the US, let your bank know that you will be receiving wages or direct deposits from a company that's not located in the US, because otherwise it will get flagged most likely. Probably should get flagged because those are the security measures banks should have. And then these are just some other things that we kind of used to recommend. Maybe you are co-oping outside the US, so these are some things that you're going to follow. And I think I mentioned it once before in this presentation, but at Thrive, we have these great people called personal finance advisors, and they can meet with any Northeastern students one-on-one. It's totally free, and by that I mean it's included in Northeastern. So you can book appointments with the personal finance advisors, call them PFAs, at nuthrive.youcanbook.me. And our PFAs this semester, their names are Zahir and Alyssa, and they can meet with you one-on-one on Zoom to go over anything specifically. So if you want to bring them some questions on how do I start going about making a budget, I've never had a full-time job. If you want to say, here's my earnings statement or pay stub, I feel comfortable sharing it with you. They can help you understand it more, and just it's really personalized. I will say though that the personal finance advisors can't give you advice on your student financial aid packages or anything like that. That would be through Northeastern Student Financial Aid. Thrive is just general personal finance advice. The Office for Financial Aid is dealing with your like student loans, scholarships, etc. So that's the difference there. We're just office on campus or center on campus, if that makes sense. And definitely, I love to plug following NU Thrive on Instagram. We have so many great events happening every week, and definitely tune in and see what you can come and learn from us. So I think that's all I have for today. Thank you so much if you made it through this presentation. I'm sure you learned something. Hopefully you did. And like I said, if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us at Thrive and book a appointment with a PFA. They're super helpful. Other than that, thank you again for listening to this presentation, and good luck on your co-op. Congratulations, and finally get to get paid. Woohoo.